Let's get to the part of the show that so many of you have showed up to hear about, which is what's wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm just going to go in here because, last week sucked. It showed you how far off this team is when it comes to, playing a San Francisco. But you thought, hey, Dallas, even though on paper it looks like Dallas is probably the favorite, you thought that they'd show you more in this game. And I know Dallas is really good at home and all that stuff. Listen, for the Eagles, the offensive scheme, not as good as it was last year. We know. And on both sides of the ball, that's probably true, which is, I think, the number one issue, when it comes to the coaching is just these coordinators, making these changes. It hasn't worked out as well. Not as glaringly defensively. I think that's personnel. I'll get to that. But the problem last night was not the scheme. It was turnovers and money downs. And if you can't convert in key situations and you turn the ball over in plus territory and your best players fail you, because that's what it is. If you wanted to go beat this team, if you want to go beat these teams on the road or at home in the playoffs, your best players have to play well. And your best players did not play their best games. I mean, Eagles pulled out all the stops. They're running fake punts on Bones, by the way, who was the special teams coach, Fossil, he's like the fake punt king. He used to do one a game with Hecker. To get that fake punt run on him, you were like, okay, the Eagles are really pulling out all the stops, the QB run game, the whole thing. But drive one, you get Jalen fumbling in plus territory. Drive two, you get a 3rd and 5. And my biggest no-no on a team that's chasing touchdowns, especially on the road, and you're going to need them because you see what the defense looks like. It's 3rd and 5. You take a shot to A.J. Brown, and he drops that ball. Okay, so you get a field goal out of that. But, part of me is constantly, if you're 3rd and 5, get yourself to 4th and short where you can run that tush-push.
Give your offense an opportunity.
To win, dude. And I understand being aggressive, but in that situation, I know it's on his hands, but he didn't catch the ball. So then you're down 24-6 out of the half, right? And the run game's going, and you get another A.J. Brown fumble. Imagine if it's 24-17, even if you kick a field goal after that Fletcher Cox fumble for a touchdown that Jalen Carter picked up. I mean, that's a totally different ball game. But instead, you fumble the football.
Easiest scoop and score ever, by the way.
Yeah, totally easy. He was in coast mode.
But I mean, just the way that it, there was no error on the scoop.
No, it was perfect.
No error on the run.
He never changed speeds. He didn't panic. He was looking at the key is you got to look at the jumbo.
He's done that before in practice.
The reason he's defensive rookie of the year for me is because he didn't celebrate after that.
Which he's done it a million times.
Don't be jumping up and down like you're down fucking 2 scores. Okay.
It's not Deontay
4th
Johnson.
and 9, you're short of the sticks. What's your play on 3rd down to get you closer? Devontae Smith, red zone fumble when it's all over. And I think when you talk about this Dallas defense, the Eagles pissed down their legs, in my opinion. Calling it what it is on the biggest stage. But Dallas made plays defensively. Got to give them credit. Al Harris, my old teammate, who's a coach there, Sirianni joked about trying to hire him away or get him hired away because he's a real problem for the Eagles and for anybody playing the Cowboys. The secondary, the defense, they've been so opportunistic. And you think about they're down their number 1 ball hawk, and they've got a guy leading the league and he's setting a record in pick sixes and that sort of thing. So defensively, though, this is the thing that will kill this team down the stretch. Okay, you can say if you're the Eagles and if you're an Eagles fan, hey, but we turn the ball over in plus territory. Hey, we move the ball a lot. The problem is if you're going to have to sustainably score 30 points a game to hang with these teams, these things pop up. And chasing points against the San Francisco 49ers or the Dallas Cowboys is not a winning proposition. So you've got personnel issues. We know that. But on a big 3rd down, you got Roby on Lamb early. You've had bad matchups all year that's plagued them, and that's the schematic part I'm talking about. You got guys outside sometimes on their best guys, and sometimes you don't have a choice. But when you control it, fucking control it. And then before the half, they actually get a sack on a 2-minute drive, which is supposed to be a drive killer, Kyle, right?
Was that the Hassan Reddick?
Hassan Reddick sack.
Which I thought he blew up Dak Prescott.
I know. And
it was one of those awkward, ooh, please get up, Dak.
Yeah.
We've seen it before with Dak. He goes down and you don't want to look.
Well, I thought they might flag
one of those
him,
guys.
But it was one of those things where the offensive lineman was the reason he went low. But, you should kill a drive with that. And at that point, you're playing for survival. You're down 17-6. You get the ball coming out. You get 2nd and 15 after that sack. It's not as much the 3rd down, which I'll get to, which is abhorrent. It's the worst thing I've ever fucking seen in my life. I wanted to vomit all over my shoes. But it's giving up 10 yards on 2nd and 15, setting up 3rd and 6. 9-10 yards on 2nd and 15. And then I've never seen this Ringo getting flagged twice in one play. You're at your own 40. Playing defense, you end up in Dallas plus territory after those 2 penalties, a face mask and a DPI, and at that point you're like, just kick a field goal for fuck's sake. They hit Cooks. They couldn't sort the stack down there at the goal line. The defense just doesn't look great, whether it's the run game, whether it's the linebackers. The pass rush wasn't getting there. And I'll say this because it's not all about the Eagles. It is about the Dallas Cowboys in this game. I got to serve the people here. The Eagles fans are here. I think there's some tough truths that you're going to hear when you talk about the Eagles, and you won't hear them again for another month because they're going to beat these teams. But Dallas, Tyron Smith is healthy. He looks like prime Tyron Smith. He was locking down Josh Sweat last night. CeeDee Lamb looks like a number 1. People are always like, is he a number 1? Is he not a number 1? He's a number 1. Ferguson is a real guy. Cooks is coming on. And we used to say, Kyle, it's all the run game. Dak, he survives because of these guys up front, because of
Great Wall of Dallas.
Pollard. Yeah, and you know what?
There's some truth to that. That offensive line looks great, and they're young. They've got an old Hall of Famer at right guard. They've got a left tackle who is somehow, you look at it, and PFF's got him rated as the number 1 left tackle in football, and I'm like, that can't be right. And then you watch him play, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's Tyron Smith.
Yeah, he's got guys locked up, and he looks like prime Tyron Smith. But the thing is now, because of the offense and the way it's changed, you can't blame the success on anybody else but Dak.
He's the reason.
He is the reason for the season for the Dallas Cowboys. And a saying we used to have in the league is, they remember what you do in December. They remember December. And so this game that he played last week against Seattle, this game that he played against the Eagles, he's the reason they're winning these games. And to me, if the season ended today, he's the MVP.
Yes.
You couldn't hear that from anybody more biased, you would say, towards the Eagles. Like, he is the MVP, and we'll see what happens.
Big credit to Mike McCarthy, too. The whole season's been vindication for this guy. His philosophy, the way he goes about leading his group, and I love his game plan week in, week out, their ability to score points. You're looking at a team who's scoring a lot of fucking points week in, week out. And I remember Kellen Moore was the guy that said, I want to score points. And Mike McCarthy said, what, Chris? I just want to win games.
Yeah.
Consequently, when you're winning games and you got Dak Prescott playing the best football of his life, and you've drafted well and you've retained talent, you develop that group up front, you're going to score a lot of fucking points.
Dude, for an old NFL guy that we made fun of, and, Kellen Moore is the next head coach and the whole thing, the Chargers offense has floundered. It got even worse, if that was possible. And Dallas has gotten better offensively, and it looks like Dak's really comfortable. And that throw at the end of the game where Sweat actually won a rush and he was bearing down on him, and the game at this point is in hand, but that throw down the left sideline is where me and Nolan turn to each other. And I've been on the other side of this thing, and Nolan, being a Philly guy, he's like, Dak's Dak. We turn, and he's like, Dak's not Dak right now. This is new Dak.
Yeah.
And so, there's not a guy that I could be happier for on another team playing well. I'd take the Cowboys thing out of it, because whether you're an Eagles fan or not, I really respect this dude. I've been around him. I played against him. He's a leader. I'm on Inside the NFL. I get to hear all the B-roll, all the mic'd up stuff. Last week, watching him lead that team against the Seahawks, I kind of got chills, man. I'm not going to, because when he had them in the huddle, it's not fake talk. He's really applying leadership skills in that huddle and on that sideline. And I think, I can't say enough about how well he's played. The Cowboys offense hadn't punted since Thanksgiving, so they are a fucking wagon. And when they do have to kick, they get this guy, Brandon Aubrey, who lines up from the star and just boots it through. And hats off to him. Actually, hats on to him, because after the game, he kept his hat on and he shut up and he let the football players talk. They had him in the circle. I loved his kicker answers. It was like, yep. I was just trying my best, and back to Tony Pollard and Dak, the guys that won us this game. But he could play a big role for them down the stretch if he's kicking balls like that.
I was kind of like the Niners meeting a couple weeks ago. There was Kittle, there was Purdy, there was Samuel, there was Ayuk.
Yeah.
Purdy said 5 words, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not comparing Purdy to his kicker.
No, but Aubrey had the same program.
The juxtaposition of a guy being surrounded by titans of industry.
And letting them do the...
You're like, hey.
I'm just going to let them have the ball.
So hats off, hats on.
So hats off and hats on to him. But, Philly, if you look at the records down the stretch, Kyle, the way this is laid out is I still think the Eagles win the East, which is huge. If you want to beat this Dallas team, you're not going to Jerry's World to do it. I've seen enough, okay? You turn the ball over, all this stuff. I'm not going to listen. I put the Eagles in some teasers last night. I'm not even betting the Eagles if they get in the playoffs and go to Jerry's World. I'm not necessarily going to put my nuts on the table for a situation like that. You can say ye of little faith or whatever you want to say, but it's not cap.
I feel like you're gonna bet.
I feel like I'm not. I feel like I'm not. Like you could make these hollow predictions.
Hey,
Dak
Dak Prescott versus the Eagles the last 2 times, 53 for 83, 645, 5 tuds, no pick.
And that's not going to change. So the offense has to score at a high click. But if you look at Philly at Seattle, and that's a monumental game. This is for the division for them because then you get the Giants, the Cards, and the Giants. The Cowboys, they go at Bills, at Finns, Lions, Commies. If both teams win out, as I understand it, the Eagles still win the East. So the Niners are the real key here if you want home field advantage because that's your shot to get into the bowl, in my opinion. It's just too much to ask to have to go to San Francisco. Could you play a lot better? Could you turn those field goals into touchdowns in the first quarter? I don't know. But right now, unless somebody gets hurt on the Niners, there's nobody better in the NFC.